back to the Now What Summit. I'm excited for this panel discussion today. This panel discussion will be led by Jeff Harker, part of the Keep Indiana Learning team, and he has assembled some guests from Franklin Community Schools. So Jeff, with no further ado, I'm going to let you take this over.
Thank you, Marty. Today, I wanted to just give voice to the wonderful stories that I hear from time to time. Really not from time to time. Honestly, I hear these stories, these kind of things all the time from teachers. Success stories, wonderful stories about students who have made changes and the impact that Building Thinking Classrooms has had on students. So again, let's dive right into it because I want you to be able to hear these stories as well. Melissa, I'm going to start with you. What story have you got for us today?
That was actually a pretty tough question because over the last year, I've gotten so many stories. I had the privilege of going into lots of different grade levels throughout our district and throughout all the schools in our district to do model lessons using BTC. And each one of them was a success story. And it was kind of neat at the end of them. Lots of the teachers would come to me and say, oh, you're not going to believe, this kid that never worked hard, they just like showed off and got everything done. And they were telling other people their input. And so they were completely engaged and just story after story after story like that. But the difference was like, I didn't know the kids before, so I couldn't tell that they weren't engaged before. All I could see was today when I came in for this one-time model lesson, everyone was just so spot on and engaged and focused. And so lots of success stories there. But the one that I think it would be disappointing if I didn't share was the experience I got to have at the end of the school year where I actually was able to go with a cadre to Hawaii and watch Peter Liljedahl in the classroom. And so we went into 3 different classrooms, middle school, and then 2 high school classrooms. And they were all, once again, like success story, success story, success story. But the high school room specifically, it was just like, you just couldn't quite believe what you were seeing. So we got to go to each classroom 3 days. So on the first day, the kids walked in and I was thinking, oh, these kids are all going to be sitting in their seats waiting, ready to listen. And no, it was just like our classrooms. Like the kids came in, half of them had their earbuds in, the other half were just leaning back, looking at their phones. Like it was our classrooms too. So that kind of norm honestly made me feel a little bit better that it's something that we're all dealing with. It's a bigger problem than just, in one classroom that you see when you walk by it. And he came in and he pretty quickly got them to work. And I would say on the first day, the majority of kids were up and working and trying to focus and trying to engage. But there was still that handful of 5 to 10 on the first day that they would be standing there looking at the board, but you could tell their earpods were in. You could tell they were just letting everyone else do it. And as he went around, he just, it was, I hate saying it was magic because when I went back and reflected on it, every move he made was in the book. Like he's telling us how to do this. All the strategies were in the book and he just is very fluent on implementing them. And so that made me want to stick to the book even more. But by the end of the first day, one student was not engaged. And every time, like if Peter would come to their group, Peter would try the strategies of like handing him the marker. And then the next time, like as soon as he'd kind of stand there like he was going to do something, and as soon as Peter left, he would just stand there or he'd hand the marker off and he'd go right back to his phone. So he just really wasn't into it. The second day, you could tell that Peter used different strategies. And once again, a few kids would start out not so engaged, but within a few minutes, all of them but one was really engaged. And the thing on the second day that was, because I was getting frustrated as a teacher, and I thought, oh, this is me. This is not the kid, because he never focused on anything that he didn't want to happen. He continuously came back to the things he didn't want or did want to happen. So he was always focusing his attention on the positive things and pulling kids into the positives, but never did he say a negative, demeaning word like, get off your phone, I need you focused. He did not point out the things that weren't working or weren't happening. He was always focused on the things that were happening. So then the third day comes along, and once again, we're down to this one kid, and we all thought, oh, this is going to just be that, 1% that we're not going to get engaged. It was so amazing. And once again, I don't want to use magic, but it looked like magic because he's fluent, but it was really all the tactics back in the book. He did say when on the third day, when it was random, he kind of set this up, I think, that when he got his card, there was one off. And so he got the one off card. And Peter said, oh, if you can go just get started, I'll be your partner, but I'm going to have to go around and work with everyone else, but I'll come back and work with you. And he went over there and he looked at it, but he wasn't really doing a lot or engaging. And then Peter went over and just partnered with him and got him to talk, and he'd go a little bit further. Then Peter would say, okay, I got to go check on everyone else. Can you keep going on this? And he would. By the third time around, he had that kid so hooked. The kid was telling him how he was going to go to college to be like a chemist or something. And he got to a point where he was like, Peter said, well, I don't know if I should give you this next one. It's not really fair because it's out of the scope of what you should be doing. And the child said, no, put it up there. Let me try it. And so it was just the whole thing. Once again, like in your head, when you're watching it happen, you're like, this is magic. But when you step back and look at what he did, like, what did he do to create that magic? Like, he's not holding back from us. He's giving it us all in the book. And it's just going back to the book and doing it until you are fluent. And so my goal from that is to continue on the path and keep trying it until I can be as fluent as he is.
Thank you for that, Melissa. And I don't mind that you keep calling it magic because sometimes it feels like magic because it just kind of like magic, it just kind of happens sometimes. That magic, I'm doing it now too. I can't stop using that word. That switch just turns on for them. And you're right. It's all there. He's not keeping it a secret from us. So thank you for that story. That is wonderful. Who would like to go next?
I can go next.
Great.
So Mandy Ramey, I teach 5th grade math and social studies. And this year, I have several stories, but I'll stick to one of my, I guess, favorites of this year. I had a student this year that when she came in initially, her IEP stated that she could become explosive when being asked to do math, which was like, okay, well, we're going to do that every day. So good luck to me. And so, maybe the first month of school, it did not go well. There was a lot of just not interaction or slamming the Chromebook down, not wanting to work with others. And as my partner teacher, Amanda Ray, and I started working through the Building Thinking Classrooms practices, we would read just a chapter here or there. And like the next day, we're like, okay, I'm ready to implement this and take this on and add to what we're already doing. And as I started doing these things, like the visible random groupings and getting the students up, starting with the thin slicing of the low floor, these easier entry points for my students that are not on grade level, and getting them to where they need to be. I started seeing a lot of differences in this one particular student where when I was giving, they're up at the boards in their random groups, students that, she would have never picked to work with and I would have never picked her to work with. And I'm giving them an open-ended question where there are multiple different responses and the answer's not there immediately. And everybody's first guess that they're trying is wrong. And they're having to build strategies to figure out, the answers. She started recognizing that there was some freedom here that she could get a wrong answer and nobody else was paying attention to her because everybody else in the room was guessing a wrong answer. And then they started talking about their strategy of how to get to the correct answer. And it just at the end of the day, she was like, well, that was fun. I just did 20 math problems and got half of them wrong. And I was like, well, everybody did. And then they started building on strategies. And the more that we started doing this, she started engaging more. She started taking notes more. She started asking me questions at the end of class or during class that it changed. And the most telling sign was when her 4th grade class and her principal came at the end of the year to do a tour with the new incoming 5th graders. These were 4th graders that'll be 5th graders in our building this year. The teacher and the principal saw her working independently on her own. They were like, who is that? We never saw that child last year. And I was like, well, that's her now. She works. They were like, we never saw that ever in the last several years. And I was like, well, yay, we did it. So it was very rewarding for her. And then became rewarding for me because I saw how proud she was of the work and the effort she was able to do.
That's a great, great story. I know my personal connection to that, my wife was a special needs teacher for 27 years. And I've come to believe that things are written into IEPs when something isn't working. That's why we write something in an IEP, because we haven't found a solution for it yet.
Well, and some of these students, she's gone the last several years believing she wasn't capable. Yep. And so then she came into my room playing that role of not being capable. And so it took a little while. And then there were definitely days that it was not sunshine and rainbows and we hit roadblocks as the math became more difficult. But, she realized that there were things that she did know, even though she knew, maybe long division that she could repeatedly subtract to get to an answer. She knew it was going to take her a lot longer, but she felt confident in herself that she could get to the answer. And so she stopped caring how long it took her. And that was what we celebrated, is that you are going to get more efficient strategies as we continue to work through this. But you do have things already.
And that didn't happen until some building thinking classroom strategies came along.
No. And then those conversations, my class as a community became so much stronger because they started listening to others, because, maybe the most efficient strategy doesn't always get us to the answer the quickest sometimes when they're thinking through them. And so, it gave some students a voice this year that hadn't had a voice in a really long time.
Thank you for that, Mandy. I love it. I love it. I love it. Matt, we're to you. And Matt is in a unique situation because, or bringing a unique perspective because you're not a math teacher, right?
No. So I started trying this out. I attended the training with Melissa and back in October or so. And I thought it sounded really fun and engaging. So I just started throwing it into my classroom. I teach 11th and 12th grade English. And I thought, maybe this will increase the activity, the enjoyment of what we're doing. And I only did curricular tasks for the most part. I didn't do anything non-curricular yet. I wasn't there yet. But I said, what the heck? I got a deck of cards and I put up some cheap whiteboards around the room. And the student that I'm thinking of, I also have a math teacher who told me the same thing about the change in him. So my 6th period class, 11th grade English, I had like a couple rows in the back of kids that really were not engaged. Independent work time was head on your desk time, or whatever, scrolling on your phone time. And I nagged them plenty, and I did whatever I could, be like, oh, can I help you with this? What do you need?
We've all been there.
Yeah. Why aren't you working? What are you doing? Those types of things. And it wasn't really getting very far. But when I started doing the random groupings, and I don't know if it was right away, but they started to participate more. I think I don't know if it's just a matter of social pressure or what, or, creativity or just a different environment, but they started to work more on the boards. And there may have still been kids that didn't engage, like Melissa said about the one student that kind of sat through the first few days. But these were kids that were barely passing, if passing at all, and they weren't turning in work. I mean, they weren't. And I remember doing a lesson one day and we did it up on the boards, and then it probably took 25, 30 minutes. And I said, okay, let's go sit at your desk and here's an independent thing to do based on that. And like all of them turned it in. And I wasn't even going to grade it. Like this was one of those, I was just going to check it, hand it back to them with a note on it. Like, hey, you got it. Or, you missed this one, whatever. And I was like, shoot, I have to grade this. Like they turned in work. And there was one kid, and I talked to Candy Miller about him, and mentally, he was capable of passing and graduating. He was a senior. He was retaking 11th grade English, and I had him in a senior class as well. Candy had him in math, and he decided that graduation wasn't worth it at some point. Like he just was like, I don't care. Stop turning things in. Even though the work he turned in was fine. Like he would turn in passing quality work regularly. He just decided that he wasn't having it. And as we started to do these things, he started to engage more in class. He participated more. He involved himself more in the learning, and we got him across the stage of graduation. So we're both happy about that. I can see the difference in those kids.
That is great. And these kind of stories, like I said, I hear all the time. Melissa, I would go back to the way you started about, well, how do I choose? There's so many, right? And you all mentioned visibly random grouping. I think in my mind, I'm thinking about the quote that Peter says in his book about you have to disrupt the system. You have to make a change so that the system can't defend itself. And, so that they can't just put their head back down on their desk. And I think the visibly random groups, in my mind, does that. It's enough of a change, and it gets them out of their comfort zone enough that they are not sure what to do other than join in.
The first couple of times I did, I had this like random group generator on my board, and before I slid it over, I saw like the random group, and I was like, oh, I haven't hit random yet, because I saw 2 kids that I was like, these kids can't be in a group together. And I hit random, and then they got in the same group again. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I can't keep hitting random. And so I was like, okay, we're just going with this today. And it mattered that it was visible to them. And I think if you make that a part of your procedures at the beginning of the year of building community of like, what you can and can't say when you see who you're in a group with, and make that a part of your structure, like it won't be an issue. But, they came to kind of like what Matt said, is social pressure. Like you had to step up and do some work sometimes, where in the past you might have played your role, and your role was to not do anything, or your role was to be the leader and, make sure X, Y, and Z were done. And it definitely, I saw a change with the visible random grouping.
I think you speak a lot of truth, and Peter hits on it in the book too, of that, what's my role, and kids do. And I know, cause I could say it as myself as a kid. Like I remember thinking every time I got put in a group, okay, who am I in this group? did the teacher put me here because I know this really well, so I just need to tell them what to do? Or did the teacher put me here because I don't know this, and so they're supposed to be telling me what to do, and I just need to sit back? Or, like what your mind is so focused on, why did they pick me to be here? And that visible random grouping just kind of takes that away. And there's no, like they get comfortable in, there's not a reason that I'm here except to collaborate with these people who don't have a reason here at all. So I don't have to give up my voice to someone else who's supposed to be smarter, and the teacher put them there so they could tell me. It's very open, and they can stop thinking of that, like stop regurgitating in their head, okay, why am I here? What is my role? It just wipes that away so that they're freed up to really jump in and collaborate. And the biggest thing I've seen or heard about is the kids come back and say, I made a new friend today. These are kids that have been that are in high school together, have gone K through 12 and don't know each other because they're not getting that chance to work, but they're coming out saying, I made a new friend today. And I think that's better than any learning that takes place in a day, is just learning that you can be friends with anyone in the room. You can collaborate, you can work with anyone in the room, and you have value in that setting.
Well, we're out of time for today. Thank you all so much. Keep going and gathering those stories and making new ones. And I thank you so much for your time. And for those of you out there listening, these stories can be yours too. Dive in, jump in, go for it, and have some fun. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks so much, Jeff.
Thank you.